Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Big League Breakdowns for day 21 of Around the League in 30 days. As we are headed not very far, we're headed to Philadelphia, right here where Bobby is. He's actually live on the scene right now at Citizens
Yeah, I'm
Bank
here at the
Park,
bank. It's
uh,
beautiful out here. Phillies aren't here
reporting.
for some reason, but
We are doing the
You're in Florida
preview.
still, you nincompoop.
He couldn't figure
Bobby,
that
is
out.
it
That's
lonely there
crazy.
at the bank? Are you first in
I,
line at the bank?
I mean, you tell me. Does it look like a packed house to you?
That looks like their attendance in like 2016, 2017. That's
Yeah,
I was
crazy.
gonna say
yeah,
they're only seeing Smurfs.
Yeah.
It looks
yeah.
like
This is it.
it,
So
it
much
looks like
fluke.
their attendance after last year's playoff disaster.
It's true.
Well,
And that is something we'll get to as we preview the Philadelphia Phillies, an episode where I won't have to do much talking, which I'm very happy about.
Me neither.
And with that, let's look at the starting lineup for the projected starting lineup for the Phillies in 2025. As I'm waiting for my producer to give there it is. All right, Trey Turner at the top, Bryce Harper. I mean, all the names that you really seen last year: Harper, Bohm, Schwarber, not in that leadoff spot, which maybe we'll touch on. Max Kepler is the addition to the offense. Uh, Cody Clemens getting his shot this year off the rip in the big leagues. I think he's a nice little player. We'll see if he gets expanded playing time. Probably not,
he's a
but
nice little player.
that is the
Getting this
projected
shot because
lineup.
Wilson got hurt.
That is the projected
Potentially.
lineup. And looking at the pitching, you could say this rotation is one of the best, if not the best rotations in the league. Zach Wheeler, Christopher Sanchez, Nola, Suarez, and in the offseason getting Luzardo from the Marlins. Jordan Romano joins the pen as well as Joe Ross in somewhat of a revamped bullpen, just a little bit. Hoffman comes out, Romano comes in, basically like a trade happened. And yeah, again, Phillies with one of the best projected rotations going into 2025, which is going to propel them to a lot of wins. But with that, we see the 2025 Phillies and now get into the storylines. First, starting off of this, which is the Phillies look pretty bad in their playoff appearance last year, and there was a lot, being said about what's going to happen in the offseason. So, did they do enough in the offseason to kind of justify the performance last year with the playoffs? Did they do enough to be better this year? Will, the floor is yours.
Mhm. If you want, if you want to go by what went wrong in the postseason, then the initial thing I feel like is no, because they addressed a lot of, it seems like, pitching needs rather than hitting. But this offense is still the same offense that sent the Phillies to the World Series in 2022 and put them within one game of getting back to the World Series in 2023. They're also a bunch of veterans, so a lot of them have had a lot of postseason experience. And aside from last year, have had a lot of success in the postseason. So, did they do enough to address the needs? I don't even know if it's really too much other than it's not an excuse, but they just handled the buy wrong. Guys did not use it, especially in the bullpen, did not use the buy correctly, and that's why things just seemed really out of whack. And you hope that I'd already am going to say that with them looking like favorites to repeat in first in the NL East, then they better figure out how to use the buy this year, or else they're going to have the exact same outcome as last year.
Looking from an outside perspective, John, I think that, the Phillies obviously have a great lineup, so, how much are you going to be able to change? They did, address the one part of the outfield that, that they were looking for in getting Kepler. But I guess looking from an outsider's perspective, did you kind of expect them to do more with how they looked in the postseason last year?
Um, I mean, you could argue that they should have shaken things up a little bit, but I don't think so. Based on what Will literally just said of, the whole thing of they went to the World Series in what was it, 2022 or
Yeah,
2021?
22.
And then we're what, one game away from a World Series in 2023. So I understand last year, their biggest issue was honestly left field, and it looks like they definitely addressed it by plugging somebody in there. They didn't really
Well, the
fix
issue was Rojas.
they yeah, well, they didn't fix the issue. They just put a band-aid on it, and they're hoping for the best. So my whole problem here is these guys aren't getting any younger to that. So that leaves me to ask the question, how much longer is this window open?
I think, there was a lot swirling around, like I said, in the offseason, and I thought, maybe a change happens. But, to me, I think that they still have a lineup that you can consider definitely, World Series contenders. And I thought a lot of it was baloney, to be honest. Of course, they didn't look great last season, but they also ran into a hot Mets team, and they got their doors blown off. There's no way to put it, but I don't think like everybody's like, oh, let's like we got to do this, get Bohm out of here, blah blah. Alec Bohm, I think there's stuff you can say about him with his frustrations and stuff like that, but he was for a majority of their season, honestly, one of their better hitters. So, to me, I don't think it's like time for them to hit the panic button. They really didn't. They add, a couple pieces. Well, I'll ask you specifically about Kepler. Like, do you like this acquisition? I know there was like other guys out there. You were saying for a while Profar would have been a nice option for the right price. But how do you feel about Kepler?
Like the other moves the Phillies did this offseason, it seems like the approach is taking flyers on guys that have a history of doing a lot better than what they did last year, but dealing with, and they had dealt with injuries last year, so they're getting them on the discount. The only exception maybe is Luzardo, because technically that's a trade, but maybe they traded away less because of what he did. Kepler is an improvement offensively over Rojas because Rojas was pretty bad for a lot of the season. But there is no denying that Rojas has fantastic defense, or at least the capability to have fantastic defense. Rojas will still get some playing time. He'll probably platoon, if not a straight platoon, he'll get a fair amount of reps versus lefties, and Marsh will sit those games. But I guess there's a chance too that if Marsh is doing well and Kepler's not, that Marsh moves to left and Rojas plays in center. Maybe it's they alternate that. Originally, when Weston Wilson was going to be on the opening day roster, it looked like it was going to be a potential platoon where Wilson plays left versus lefties and Rojas would play center. Now maybe they choose go back and forth between Kepler and Marsh getting times where they sit against lefties. I know they've tried Sosa in the outfield. Overall, I think that it's going to be an improvement in the outfield, and I expect Kepler to have a pretty nice bounce back year. I don't know if necessarily I think he's going to have be up there with his best season in Minnesota, where I think he hit like 36 home runs or something, but I can see him hitting the low 20s, getting about a 250 average. And Kepler, at least based on his career stats, doesn't strike out as much as what it feels like a majority of the Phillies players do. Like he'll tend to be around 100 strikeouts. So definitely can expect more contact from him.
And Bobby, I don't get to do this often, but I will shift the question to you. Um, Phillies ball knower, by the way, Robert Morrison the third. Uh, um, were you wanting or surprised that they didn't do a shakeup to this lineup after last year? I think again they were, as John said, one win away from the World Series in 23, but they got embarrassed in the 2024 postseason.
Yeah, I would say, oh wow, I am way too low in this. God damn. All right. So no, I
Lean
would
back,
say
stretch out your neck,
yeah, so I'll just do this. There we go. I would say that I'll say this. There was no blow up that was going to happen this offseason. Anyone who said that they were going to blow up a lot of their players is kind of kidding themselves. What I did think was going to happen was that either Alec Boehm or Nick Castellanos were going to be potential targets for other teams that might have wanted to make a deal. That didn't happen, and now we're with them. But we did pick up Max Kepler, who I agree is going to be a decent pickup, and is might be a better bet than what we had at Rojas. We'll see though. The problem I have, and Will I know is chomping at the bit to get on me about this. I need. The problem with the Phillies right now is that like we're paying all these guys big money and they're not performing they need to. Trey Turner is more the issue than anybody else, but Nick Castellanos was driving me nuts throughout a lot of the regular season last year in regards to the pitches that he was taking swings at. Now, look, I'm not going to pretend that I am at all and on any level compared to what these guys are doing. But I swear to God, the sliders are always like 3 feet off the plate that he swings at, and it drives me insane. I will say though, in his defense, even though he only batted 254, which look, that's still even respectable. It's even hard to argue. It's he knocked in 23 home runs in the season as well. When he got to the postseason, he was the only one doing a damn thing whose name wasn't Bryce Harper. So on top of that, you just need the top of the order to do better. They're starting to experiment with a different order lineup now, so hopefully that might lead to some more runs. They're putting Schwarber in the 4 spot, so hopefully, like when he actually hits his bombs instead of striking out, that means he'll get 2 or 3 runs in instead of just his solo shots that we're used to seeing out of him. So to kind of go back and answer your question, like, am I shocked that they didn't blow it up? No. I was thinking that they might make 1 or 2 big moves because one thing that always scares me is a very complacent front office. The Phillies haven't been that for a while, but after a really disappointing postseason, I would have thought they would have explored something, and maybe they did and couldn't figure it out. I mean, there was a lot of rumors about Alec Boehm going for a little while. Castellanos was a bit of a long shot, but Alec Boehm seemed to be the target, and they end up keeping him anyway. So hopefully he has the residual because, I mean, damn, we were talking about him. I remember we did that All-Star watch party, and we were high on Boehm at the time, and he fell apart after that. So hopefully he can return to form. But, I mean, the top of the order just needs to kind of get it together, and I'm okay with where the Phillies ended up landing after the offseason.
So some quick things piggybacking off of what you said first, thinking about what they could or could not have done or should or should not have done this offseason. I think in the end, instead of flipping it with the lineup, what it really is they decided that, you know what, this is the lineup we want to stick with. So we're going to try to solidify the pitching as much as possible. Because there's no doubt last year going into the season and even into the postseason, when you remove that number 5 spot, everyone would say the Phillies were up there as having the one of the best matchups out there. And so this year, what they've really done is now they're bringing in Luzardo. Sure, he had an off year last year, but the 2 years prior, he was basically the ace for the Marlins in the ERAs in the mid to low 3s. If he could do that as a number 5 starter, considering what Sanchez has done the last couple of years as he's gotten better, and Suarez does, then I mean the Phillies rotation is going to be amazing. There might be now comparisons to the 2011 season when they had Halladay, Lee, Hamels, and Oswalt, and this team could be better. And that team won 102 games. So there's that in a sense of how I think they really decided to make the big change. It just wasn't in the offense like we expected or the bullpen really, because those were the 2 things that stood out as being what went wrong in the postseason. The other thing I wanted to quickly touch up on was Castellanos. I'm not going to go too much in depth. We're probably going to have something else later. We're going to fight about it. But the one thing about Castellanos, it's just, I mean, yes, he's an interesting player because I don't feel like the stats do him justice. But I also understand what you're saying from a chasing sense, because he is someone, especially since he's been with Philly, he's a free bet. He will swing at anything he wants. He does it you can't really tell him to do certain things. And supposedly last year, he said for the first couple months of the season, he was being maybe a little less free with how he was approaching each at bat. And he did struggle the first couple months, hitting 193 and 229. But after that, he batted 276, 275, 275, 292. And he had 16 home runs in the last 4 months of the season. So, I mean, and the previous year, at least up to the All-Star break, I know in the summer, he had a little bit of a slump, but he was an all-star for the first half of the season in 2023. So there is a thing about if you just let Castellanos cook, he can do quite a bit of damage. And so I think sometimes you just have to, at this point, take that Castellanos is the type of guy that will chase pitches. Thankfully, in the Phillies lineup that they currently have, he's going to be the number 5 or 6 hitter. And so with all those other guys around him, you're not going to be, I feel quite as upset. But, being Philly sports fans, that he's going to swing at that one pitch and we're going to want his head on a spike, because that's how we live.
Yeah, it's what always happens. And it's just listen, again, like I said, I acknowledge how good of a late run he had last season. It just, every time he was up at the plate, I held my breath, because it's damn it, man. I just need him to not chase this, the slider or curveball just once, because when he gets a hold of the ball, he's a dangerous hitter. It's just him finding the right pitch. He just doesn't seem to take his time with it. It's that's what
He's
drives
not
me
an
nuts.
opposite field hitter. If he were someone that would be
No.
okay with poking balls in the right field, that's a different story. But he's a pull guy and he's all about rhythm, and that slider is a pitch that will get him out of his rhythm.
The Metro, or the advanced analytics, if you will, did not like him coming in the 2024. I definitely remember that.
They never like him.
And I but like
Phillies.
Castellanos is like a guy that I guess is kind of easy to fall, put the fault on, right? Because like you're not gonna put it on Harper or Schwarber, or even like you kind of give Trey some grace because of
He's
his
losing
standing.
it quickly.
But like it
His
always
defense is
feels,
what's making him lose.
yeah, I
Yes.
don't know. It just always feels like Castellanos is kind of an easy target. And is it because he looks like an ass sometimes at the plate? Maybe. I don't know. So
Well, the three things, I mean, if you want to go by metrics, then it's defense is what's going to be the thing. And the defensive metrics with Castellanos are where it's really hard for me to truly say like he's this horrendous defender that it feels like a lot of people point him out to be. Because I know from like a defensive run, defensive run saved and outs above average, like he's pretty bad. He's well into the negatives. But the thing is, when it comes to like if you want to go old school and just like fielding percentage and errors, the dude has made 3 errors in right field in his entire career as a Philly. Those all happened last year, and he's been the league leader in fielding percentage for right fielders in the National League each of the last 3 seasons. So the thing is, he may not have the range to get to everything like some outfielders do, or maybe some of that instinct to cut the ball off a certain way because of a route or whatever. But if he can get to a ball, he's going to make the out. So it's like that to me. That's fine. That's enough. It's weird how to like look at his stats at that in that way, just because the defensive stuff to me is so like crazy how to grade someone.
Well, boys, we're projected right now of 21 different tragedies because he's projected for 21 home
I
runs.
was gonna say this is the year where Castellanos is going to do amazing because look at all the stuff that's in the news these days.
Oh yeah.
that is true. Looking at that postseason again from last year,
Please
John,
don't.
John, I'll ask you first because it doesn't, hurt as much. Um, do you think that was a fluke for the Phillies? Was it more of them running into a hot Mets team when they were not at their best, or, is this a concern for the Phillies moving forward?
So here's the reality of it with how they played, especially in the month of September and October offensively. Their team batting average was 256 in September and October, on base percentage 318, slugging percentage 440. Um, Truth be told, I think they just ran out of gas because I'm looking at this and I think Will's right. They didn't handle the the buy correctly because I'm looking at these these numbers here throughout the lineup. You have Schwarber batting 125, Turner batting 200, Harper batting 333, Castellanos 412, and then JT might as well have not shown up to the ballpark because he batted 0. Let's see here. You have Boom 077. The point is that you know I think there's the old adage rest versus rust. And when it comes to the bye of the postseason, you essentially have about 5 days to a week, depending if you think about it. And you aren't necessarily giving your best effort toward the end of the season, especially if you have the division locked up like they did. So you could make the argument, all right, they didn't, perform correctly here and they didn't prepare correctly. Now, that's last season. This season, going into it, you have to make those adjustments. You have to keep the pedal down because their second half numbers, as far as their batting numbers, were they weren't great. their second half numbers. See here, batted balls or base on balls 181, batting average 255, on base percentage 316, slugging percentage 425. They they need to get on base. They need to improve. They need to stay consistent. Those numbers show me one thing from the second half, whereas their playoff numbers show me another, in that they need to keep the pedal down, honestly. They need to practice just like they did throughout the entire season. And I think they took that week off to rest, but it made them rusty.
Can I respond to John before my brain explodes?
Yes.
I threw a lot out there.
I'm keeping so many points in my head. I'm like, I want to answer this, and this. And now I forget all of them. But no, the first one, all right, so the Phillies second half. Yes, it wasn't as good. They were probably about a 500 team. I think they were like 34 and 32 record-wise. Big reason why that was is they did not have a number 5 pitcher. I don't remember the exact stats off the top of my head, but there was something like 3 and 15 when the number 5 pitcher was playing, because they had Taijuan Walker, who was beyond terrible. They had like Kobe Allard fill in, Spencer Turnbull, and he got hurt. Like, they just did not have a number 5 pitcher for about 3 months. And when you take that away, then the record looks good. So there is that. What, you're about to say something?
I'm just going to ask the question: how does that affect their second half batting average?
That isn't as bad as I think you're making it sound. 256.
No, I'm not. No, what I'm saying
but 256 compared to other teams, when you're looking as a team batting average, that's actually pretty good. Like, the best batting average last year in the entire season was 263. Right, but you kept saying the batting was okay. Like, that's not okay. That was pretty good.
In comparison to the first half. In the first half, they were a lot better. In the second half, I think
all right, then what were those first half stats?
All right, I'll give the same ones that I did. They're based on balls.
First half.
I know. I'll give the same ones I did. Give me a second. 334 walks. Batting average 259, on base percentage 331, slugging percentage 424. So that on base percentage,
all right, so the on base percentage is the slightly one different.
That I think that's a big difference. I think
what were the run score differences?
Let's see here.
Well,
477 versus.
Well, hold on. I'll get to that, Tyler. Say that again. Sorry.
477 versus 307. 477 was in the first half.
Playing in what, like 20 less games? And so that's probably about another 80. If you're going to say they get about 4 runs a game, that's about 80 runs they didn't get. To me, they're very comparable how the first and second half stats were. It's just a matter of the record looks really bad because of how the number 5 spot was trash. Now, going to like the postseason and stuff, yeah, the Phillies were the only team out of a bye team that did not advance. So clearly everyone else figures out how to handle the rust but the Phillies. So I hope they learn. But the offense, to me, isn't as bad as the numbers seem. And the only reason I say that is when you compare it to what the team did the previous year, about only like 3 players really kind of stood out as being different. Because like you said, Schwarber batted 125 last year, which is true. That doesn't sound great. He batted 118 the previous year when they won the NLDS. The 3 people that kind of stood out as, so I should say, so yeah, like you said, Schwarber, Turner didn't have great postseasons. Bone batted 077 last year. Stott 182. Real Muto did not have a hit. Marsh batted 077. But of those guys, really the only ones that did were substantially different than what they were in 2023 were Turner, Real Muto, and Marsh. Stott was basically at par. Schwarber was at par at what he was. And even Bohm just is not apparently the greatest postseason hitter, which, he's young, figure stuff out. So to me, it's just the postseason situation was all how the bullpen did its thing. Because if you think about it, did the Phillies score a lot of runs? No, but they had the lead in like 3 if not all 4 games. It's just that at least in game 1 for sure, and I know, of course, game 4 because of the grand slam to Lindor, they had leads. And I especially would think in game 1, normally you would think 1-run situation, Wheeler gets you through. You need your bullpen to handle 2 more outs. They went one of those games, because the bullpen is slightly less rusty, then even if the offense isn't doing as great, they're going back to Philly for game 5 and anything is possible. So I think it's more of the bullpen needs to figure out how to stick to a routine. And I really want to pay attention this season on how guys do when they haven't pitched in multiple days. Like I thought about doing some research and seeing like, all right, bullpen guys, how many games did they give up runs? And then on the games they gave up runs, when was the last time they pitched, to see if there was some type of connection between like how they did when they had days off. But it was so much work to do, and I'm already tired from all the other stuff I have to do in life. So I'll do it another time if I get motivated.
Hey, future Bobby here. So I'm a dumbass. I muted myself during the show. A few times where I spoke up, I could actually be heard on the stream. So I'm just going to tell you what I said, or briefly what I said, so that I can keep the conversation moving. So in this instance, all I said was that the Phillies were actually playing intra-squad / game speed practice games and scrimmages during this point in time, just to kind of keep it fair to what the Phillies were doing during the bye last year.
No, I know, but I know other teams that have been eliminated in the first round too, and they've said similar things. So I think that's just a generic thing that most teams do just to try to stay fresh. So to me, that wasn't enough. There had to have been something else. What else could have been done? I don't know. I don't know what their entire buy plan was, but obviously, if you're trying to put a lot of emphasis in a quote unquote game speed inter squad game, that is the main thing, was not enough. They should have basically had guys pitching either every day with like 1 day rests or something. I imagine that's not what happened. It probably was like they got 2 or 3 days off, bullpen guys a day to ramp up, maybe the inter squad a day off, and then they went into the playoffs. And then by then I would think, yeah, it's a little too much sitting.
I will ask this to the Phillies fans, because like as a non-Phillies fan living in the Phillies market area, it feels like, you look at their playoff history, right? So we have last year, but then the year before they get it to the NLCS, the year before they make it to the World Series. But I guess like the we talk about like in your notes, you put like the Phillies magic, and I feel like for a couple years now, it feels like they're a team that really tails off, like during the back half of the season. Like, bro, they'll have that trip where they go to like Miami for a 4-game series in September and they'll get swept. And I swear to God, it happens every year. So, is that, you know, you look at it and you're like, all right, is that a fluke or is this like a trend? Like, you can't really say that their last postseason was a trend for their postseason history, but does it concern you that like this team does sometimes like feel like they throttle down at the back
They
half
do
of
a
the
lot.
year?
No,
Yeah,
I think
so
they throttled down a lot in September, and that's been the case for a while, because that was actually the big reason why we didn't make the postseason prior to 2022. Was like the first year we had Kapler, the team was like 60-46 or something. Like we were sitting pretty, and then we enter August, and then from then on, especially in September, the team collapsed and ended up being a 500 team. That's just like, even when we made the postseason in 2022, we still were iffy in September. And part of that was that it was like, oh, great, is this going to be like what it was the last couple seasons? But we eked it out and got the last wild card spot by a game over the Brewers in the final series. So, I mean, that's just always been a Phillies trend. I don't think that necessarily pinpoints any concerns about what may or may not be in the future.
Hi, future Bobby again, coming in with another hot point. At this point, all I'm saying is the NL East is currently getting stronger because the Mets are getting stronger with the signing of Soto and extending Alonso, things like that. So with the Braves and the Mets getting stronger, it's a lot harder for the Phils to make a stab at winning the division. The Marlins, though, are not to be worried about.
And that's my point, is that you could see in the numbers that during the second half of the season, they pulled up on the throttle a little bit. And I think that, I don't want to call it laziness because that's a bit drastic, but that lack of attention to detail maybe it cost them when it mattered most in the postseason. least
So,
I think
The
so.
biggest thing I noticed in the second half, because I still don't quite agree with everything you're saying, the biggest thing that I noticed that was different in the second half that does need to get better was their bullpen ERA was not the greatest in the second half. I think it was like 4.5.
Future Bobby, once again, I make an exasperated joke here, just saying, "Oh wow, the Phillies have a bullpen. What a shocker!" Yeah, that's all I said.
all right.
That's the main thing, especially because that was one of the things that was
Tale
really
as
high
old
for the
as
Phillies last year
time.
was the bullpen.
So what happens? What
We cut him
happens? Oh
before
my God! If
August.
I get interrupted again, I swear to God.
You shouldn't have let us be on the show together.
God, man.
You should
Especially you
actually
let us
look at
be
your
put
co-host
next to
before
one
speaking.
another.
So I mean, the Phillies. If this happens again in 2025, what is the plan after that?
All right, so I've thought about this a bit for a while because that's what I do in my downtime because I don't do anything else.
I think about how to make the
The shift,
Phillies
well,
better.
it's also so I'm trying to think about also who's available next off season too, and what I think could happen, and who's on at least near the end of contracts or whatever. I know, and we said earlier that this offseason there was thoughts that the Phillies would do something to shake it up. I think Dombrowski said something at the beginning of the offseason. Next offseason is where I feel like there's more of a shot because the people that I think have eyes on them the most are Bohm, Stott, and Marsh. Bohm is purely from an attitude sense. I feel like it's all about composure and how he carries himself. Because that was the thing that was noticeable to me in the second half was when he wasn't doing well. He was slamming his bat a lot. And I don't mean a lot like every game, seventh inning, like last at bat comes around and he just slams his bat in frustration because it's another over. He would do this in like the second inning. Like he could have his first swing of the game pop up and he'll throw his bat down. And it's like, dude, you have an entire game left. Like, pull back a little. Hi, John.
Hi.
So
I was looking at something else.
that was nice. Anyway, so to me, there's eyes on him because of that, and because he still I think he still has an extra year after this year, if not two, where he has team control. The Phillies have Aiden Miller in the system that they like a lot. He's roadblocked by everyone aside from Bohm. The only option I could think of outside of that is if Harper's apparently made it known that he's willing to move back to the outfield for a season or two if we can get a big like first baseman.
Future Bobby, we're almost done with these. I promise. I just make a point here saying that Harper basically has alluded that he will basically play anywhere to win. Doesn't really matter where he plays. I mean, maybe besides catcher, but he will literally play anywhere. So him transitioning to another role is not a worry whatsoever.
I was gonna say there's a whole lot of you move Harper out of first, and there's another option, but I still don't feel like that's going to happen for a minor leaguer. So the fact that Miller's in the system, the fact that Miller's in the minor leagues, that's a possibility that Bohm could be traded in the offseason if he again has composure stat issues. Marsh is the one more than Stott to me that has a realistic shot of being traded just because of how much he strikes out. They like Rojas. They have Justin Crawford coming up through the system. Tucker's a free agent at the moment after the season, so the Phillies could look there. Didn't say this earlier, but another option in the infield, if they really want to make things interesting, is Vladdy's a free agent. They could try to put him at third. They could move Harper in the outfield and put Vladdy at first. Stott, the main reason I'm thinking him is that Luis Arraez is a free agent after this year. So if the Phillies feel like they really want a table setter at the front of the batting order, because whatever they do to shake up this year doesn't really work, then Arraez could be someone they try to get and then stick him at the top of the order. And there you have your 300 hitter, and then you got Harper, Schwarber, if they resign Schwarber behind him. So I think that if they fail in the postseason, look, one of those three guys is going to go, and there's probably going to, if not immediate prospects are going up to replace him, then expect a big bat to get signed in that spot.
Bobby, I thought you were going to tell me that you weren't recording by your camera.
Well, it's very possible I was muted for a good portion, not the whole time.
Oh,
But,
no.
Yeah, at least on the last
Okay.
topic. So I'll figure it out. All
Well,
good.
we'll listen back afterwards and see if we have a very quiet second Philly guy. In which case, a
Don't
lot
know
of
when that
editing
don't know
needs
when
to
that
happen.
happened, but apparently that happened. So that's on
I
me.
want
It's all
to.
good
I
though.
want to see
No
if
one
you
cares for
dub-
my opinion anyway.
No,
There's a
what I
reason I'm
want
not
is
usually on
no.
the
This is
camera.
what I want. If you're gonna keep your silent portion in, I want you to dub it afterwards and just see how bad it looks.
I might
just
just
want to
try
point
that.
out.
Actually, I like it was better than all the other ideas I was thinking in my head.
I want to point out we let him into the panel one time, and we have all these issues.
Yeah, that's
I
true.
Not the
usually got to
first
mute
time,
up most
but-
of the time. I'm not used to the workflow yet, so that's on me. It's all good
Jeez,
though.
man.
I didn't
This would
say
be
anything
interesting.
even remotely important.
The entire
Get it
Castellanos
together.
argument is me arguing with myself. Got it.
That's usually
Yeah,
what happens.
Will is hearing voices in his head that are telling
Bobby
him
is
that
the other
Castellanos is a
voice
bad
in my
ball
head.
player.
I'm just so tired that I've manifested him into a fourth panel in this show.
If I'm your fucking demon, I pray for you. I will
I
actually
didn't
pray
say
for you.
demon. No, you're my angel. You're my Philly angel.
Oh yeah, they're gonna be so great.
Okay,
Castellanos
never mind.
chases pitches.
to bring this back on topic, I have a question, and I just noticed this.
Oh God.
Oh, are we
In
bringing
your
it on topic?
lineup, the biggest portions of your lineup and your biggest stars, I would argue, are not homegrown talent. Does that make a difference?
That's
No.
that's where
No.
that's a common debate people have, and so I'd say what you think.
Are you
I think
surprised
it's a
that
combination of homegrown and talent.
baseball.
It's just what you think that balance is, and it also is how much money that your team is willing to spend on other guys.
Are you surprised that they're tinkering with the lineup? Like, I feel like having
No.
Schwarber out of that leadoff spot is kind of crazy, though.
At the
I
beginning
like it
of the
more and
season, I
more.
don't care. My thought is, if we're going to be a postseason team, when the postseason hits, I want you to have the lineup set. But if you need to take 161 games to figure it out and we get to the postseason, fine. I really don't care.
Yeah.
161. So on the last day of the season, you better have it figured out.
And then so therefore it's the last game of the season. They're sitting all these guys that, or maybe it's not 161 straight games. It's just that one game in the season where it clicked and they're like, all right, we're saving that.
Yeah.
I will say this. I don't think Turner should be your leadoff guy. I think Kepler could honestly be your leadoff guy with his ability to get on base, and especially with his batting average at 253. If he stays healthy, then I think he would be a good leadoff guy for you.
I understand what you're saying. I think ideally the Phillies want Stott to be the leadoff hitter for the future because he's more old school. So he's like having Jimmy Rollins up there. He's fast. 2 years ago, not last year, because he was dealing with that kind of nerve injury the entire season. He hit like 280. He started the season batting leadoff, and he got on base in like the first 14 or 15 games. It set a team record to start a season. And he's got a good eye and can both hit the ball down the left field line last second if he's fighting off a pitch with 2 strikes, something that he did lead the league in 2 years ago was 2 strike hits. And he also can walk. So I think Stott is the guy they want. However, because of what he did last year, he's got to kind of prove himself, I guess, in a sense. Plus, it's also trying to figure out how do you rearrange that top of the order with Turner, Bohm, Schwarber, and Harper if you're going to put Stott in the leadoff spot. There's a lot of possibilities, but the fact that the Phillies lineup is already fairly left-handed heavy to start with a lefty, I don't know exactly what they would do. My guess is it would probably put Harper back to third and split it up somehow.
Yeah, I don't know.
If there's a
Game
tragedy,
162 is Minnesota.
If there's a tragedy earlier in the day, I'll tell you who you put in the third spot, and that's Castellanos.
Oh my god!
So wrong. I love
You
the
want
meme,
me
but
to
it's so
die,
wrong.
don't you?
Castellanos has actually come out and said he hates it when people do that.
Well,
What?
too bad.
Stop
The whole
proving
thing
him
that
right.
he-
Yeah,
that he only hits well whenever
Tragic.
bad things happen.
Yeah.
You know
Go
what?
for-
You know
go
what?
for
Tough.
5 one of
Stop
those
chasing-
days, then.
Stop chasing sliders.
Last thing I want to finish on is the NL East this season. The Mets get better. The Braves get healthier. And
we didn't answer your question of do they blow it up if they fail
it's been too long.
I answered it. I gave that
It's too
long
long.
explanation about Bohm,
Yeah.
Stott, and Marsh of what to happen if it blows up.
I think you tinker. I don't think you blow it up.
They're
Yeah,
not gonna blow it up, but I mean, I expect
they can't.
one significant thing to happen. The question
Yes.
is it because they're bringing up a youngster to fill in the hole, or because they want to bring in like a Vladimir Guerrero to
Dude,
be
it's
another huge bat?
it's gonna be Bohm anyway. It's the arbitration year next year.
He's the well to me, he's the one that's most likely. It's him and Marsh, and I think it's kind of 50-50, and they could even both happen. But Bohm's the one
Yeah.
that makes sense just because even though he's the most clutch hitter on the team, so it's really hard to say goodbye. And if they do, I kind of want to be like, please bring in like Vladdy and move Harper to the outfield.
Well,
Yep.
you know it's going to cost at least $550. He
Whatever.
turned it. He said
Not my
he
money.
was offered
But anyway.
500. He was offered 500 and said they were 50 million off. So,
Not my money. But no, it's because Miller is starting the season in Double-A. Barring that everything goes well, he'll finish the season in Triple-A. He's the one that I think the Phillies like a lot, and they could bring him up to the majors to fill in for Bohm.
Yeah, and yeah, I think, like I said, they don't really have the option to blow it up because they have so many guys under contract for eternity. But I don't think you would want to do that anyway. But they will have options. But then, yeah, looking at the division, Pacoda, we love them, and we've
No, we
already
don't.
Will has already said how Pacoda just absolutely loves the Phillies.
I love
Sorry,
the Phillies defense.
sarcasm, but Pacoda has them finishing third, 85 wins. New York and Atlanta both at 91 and 92 respectively. I I'll say this as an outsider, then I'll let the experts get into this. But for a long
What about
time,
John?
and John and John,
I was about to say, I guess that means I'm next.
Experts and John.
I guess that means I'm next in terms of the lineup then.
For a long time with like the Braves when they were, winning year after year that division, it was like until they prove me otherwise, I'm not betting against them. And now I kind of feel like it's the same thing with the Phils. Like they haven't done anything drastic enough to be like, yeah, no, I don't think they're gonna win it anymore. Like if anything, I think their team got better from last year. Like they got again, they have a great rotation, and they potentially made an upgrade in the outfield. So I find the line that Pacoda put up kind of crazy, especially like being like whatever it was, 6 to 7 games off. So as your biased or unbiased selves, is this fair? Like, I mean, again, Atlanta's getting healthier this year. I understand it, but there's still questions with them. The Mets, we have questions about their starting rotation. So, Will, do you think
No. I'm going
Okay,
first
John.
because these guys are going to be biased.
We're gonna make this an hour-long episode.
In all seriousness, though, I think that you're right, Ty, in terms of the consistency that the Phillies are offering. I like them to win the division. I 100% think they're going to be in the playoffs. It really depends on what Atlanta does. The Mets have a huge question mark on their injuries and their injury situation, at least as of right now, as of March 14th. In September, we'll see. But,
all right, experts, Will, how do you feel about it?
The Phillies won 95 games last year with an awful number 5 pitcher and some down years from Stott, Marsh, and Real Muto. And you even had Turner out for a month. The fact that they have arguably the best, if not the best, top 2 or 3 starting rotations in baseball, and I expect bounce backs from not necessarily major bounce backs, but at least improvements from last year from a lot of those guys in the lineup. The fact that they won 95 games given their struggles, I think it's even possible you see the Phillies kissing 100 games again. So I have them winning the division by a fair amount.
Yeah, nobody hit 100 last year, but I could see it happening. It feels like it's gonna happen. I mean, the Dodgers
It's going to happen like 3 times this year.
Yeah, I know.
It's going to be like it didn't happen last year, and it just explodes this year.
I feel like there's gonna be like a 110 win team, and that might be the Dodgers. I don't know.
Okay.
there's going to be 5 teams that hit 100, and 2 and 4 of them are going to be in the same division.
No, I was going to say there's going to be 500-win teams, and the World Series is going to be a 90-win team versus an 85-win team.
Bobby, how do you like the Phil's chances to win the division this year?
Cautiously optimistic, as all as you know what, it's a common theme, and given
Wow.
that again, and we talked about this, that you know at the end of the
Philly
day
answer.
there wasn't a lot of moves made, but they I think filled the right hole that they needed to fill. So they were able to get Kepler in, and I do think that's going to be a good addition. The problem I have is like what I said earlier. I do think the NL East only continues to get stronger now. With the two teams that I'm worried about, it because it's certainly not the Marlins, are injury ridden right now. Yeah, are injury ridden right now, and it remains to be seen how they'll recover from it. The Braves will get healthier probably a little bit quicker. We'll see though. And the thing with the Braves is I'm scared of them usually when they're fully healthy. They're annoying. Even if they're not even as dominant as they were before, there's just something about Braves and Phillies games that always seems to be like, man, the Braves feel like they just have it together over the Phillies. I don't know what it is. It always just feels that way. It always feels like the Phillies have to fight a little bit harder to beat the Braves.
Attaboy,
That being
Hoppa.
said, over the course of, hey, listen, my background, I'm not going to show it again because you're going to see through my phone like you did last time. But regardless of that, I it just over the course of the season though, I do think the Phillies are going to make a good run at it. I do think that they're going to be fine getting into playoffs. I do think they're going to be fine having a better postseason. Now, I worry getting to the NLCS, but hopefully they prove me
We'll
wrong
cross
on this
that bridge
case.
when we get there for the postseason.
Yeah,
We
I'm
got
gonna.
6
That
months
is
to play.
literally. Yeah, that is as far as I'll go for right now. But yeah, I'm cautiously optimistic.
This has been day 21 of Around the League in 30 days. You can follow us on Twitter at BL_breakdowns, Big League Breakdowns everywhere else. Make sure to like the video if you liked it. Subscribe to the channel for more content. This next episode, we will be going to Schittsburg. Welcome the Pirates. I'm not looking forward to it. Until then, though, we will see you next time.
Hey, Ty, you better wear your seatbelt, buddy.
No, I want to die.